think it's 23. 23. No, I think it's 11 and 12. Awesome. It is. We're live.
Hello. Good morning. Good
Katie's
evening.
excited that she was stuck behind trains. Chelsea's excited to be here.
I'm a little chilled.
Has her blanket
It's my
that
jacket.
doubles as a jacket.
No, it's my jacket that doubles as a blanket.
Oh, good call.
Don't
Good
get
call.
it twisted.
It's not a snuggie. It is a real
no,
jacket.
There is one of those snuggie type things that Nick got at after prom. Jonah sleeps with it every night, but it would be wonderful right now.
Do you guys wear blankets like there? Do you have a wearable blanket? I can't
It's
do
like
it.
an oversized hoodie.
No. Don't
This
like
thing I'm talking
it.
about.
Yes, it is.
It's like an oversized hoodie, and it's real. It has a hoodie pocket and the hood, and
I like a good comfortable hoodie, but
I don't know that I could wear this around. It would be
It'd be tough.
bulky, but it is kind of convenient that it's not just a blanket. So
Yeah. Well, welcome. Maybe, hopefully, we can get through this, and it doesn't take us too long. But we're gonna try to finish up the Sermon on the Mount this week. So, in order to do that, though, I want to do some review. You ready for this? Not all the way back.
I was gonna say, I don't think so. It's
Don't
not
tell them
happening.
about the way back. Let's talk about what did we say is the declaration that's happening in all four Gospels. There's a Greek word.
Of course there is. Oh gosh.
There's a Greek word
Mm-hmm.
for
No, you got to give me my moment. And I can't say it because I'm laughing at myself. It's all Greek to me.
yes.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. I had a physics teacher in high school that he walked in and he said, I can speak any language but Greek. I know every language. And a bunch of kids at Oklahoma School of Science and Math perk up and like, ooh, I'm gonna. Really? So this one guy had studied German or something. This kid from Veneta, he had been teaching himself German, and he spouts off something in German, and I'm like, and professor looks at him and he goes, it's all Greek to me. So anyway, that's exactly what I think of when you say that. So if that's what you're saying, I don't understand it. But
It's all Greek to me.
there's a Greek word.
What's it start with?
Starts with an E.
That doesn't help. Never mind. Oh, Evangelion.
It's not a V. That's a U.
Evangelion.
Yeah. Euangelion.
It didn't have the tail.
I'm sorry.
Oh, but that is a V.
Correct.
Okay, well, never mind.
Euangelion.
Evangelion.
What does that mean?
All the Gospels.
That is a gospel.
Oh.
It is good news.
Not what that means. It does mean good news, yeah.
It is the good news. It's a declaration. And in the Greek, it would have a specific context. And what is it?
What? Alexander the Great guy?
The Euangelion is a specific declaration of good news.
Of great joy.
A good news of a new king, a new kingdom, and a new king. That's that term. So all the Gospels have a specific Evangelion, kind of slanted a little bit different way, right? They still tell the same good news, the same gospel, but they have some specific emphasis, right? Does Matthew have a specific emphasis?
They all have a specific emphasis.
Okay, so what is Matthew's focus? What do we say? There is a people group with a specific name that Matthew is targeted towards. It starts with it. He is a Jewish writer writing to
Jewish people.
And a specific group of people that starts with an M. Zer.
Mamzer.
Mamzer.
Thanks, babe.
You're welcome. Yes, this is great. She loves this. If you don't know, Chelsea's favorite part.
No.
This right here. It's easy for me because I've like actually.
He regurgitates it all the time.
Yeah, I'm.
And he's always listening to it, and I am not. If he was going to talk to me about the stuff he listened to today, which we will in just a minute, I remember that.
Yeah.
But I'm not a great end of, like, I can't take a semester test over the whole semester. That's not going to work for me. I can remember things for this moment, and then I let them go because I don't feel like I need them anymore.
Remind me of who Matthew is.
A disciple?
Yep. What was he doing before he was a disciple?
Was he a fisherman? Or was he a tax
Matthew.
collector? Or
Matthew,
was he a... Luke was the doctor.
Yeah.
Matthew was a...
His name is Levi.
What?
You want to phone a friend?
Yeah. What? I said tax collector.
Yes.
And you looked at me like I was crazy.
Well,
so I thought that
you were
can't
just
be it.
I thought you were just guessing random.
No,
things,
I said fisherman. I'm like, nope, tax
not
collector.
fisherman. Yeah, not
and then
fisherman.
I thought
Tax
that
collector.
cannot be right. Okay.
Yes.
I'm out of options.
Tax collector. How would people in those days feel about a tax collector?
Oh, they hated them.
So in the Jewish terms, what would he be?
What do you mean in the Jewish terms?
In the Jewish custom, he would be an outcast.
A what?
I
know, I heard that. A leper?
No.
I don't know. That's all I can think of.
Starts with an M.
A mamzer.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
He would be a mamzer. He would be considered a traitor. You're a sellout. You sold yourself out to Rome, like completely separated. You're not one of us anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Mamzer. So like he has this identity with this group of people because he was one. And Jesus comes along and says what to him?
Follow me.
Follow me. Do you remember? You remember the word for that from last week?
No.
Lukakurai?
Oh, yeah. I don't want to go there again.
Not the Lukukaracha, Lukakurai. But that is a great mnemonic device to help you remember.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so he says, come follow me.
That's what the follow me was?
Yes. The Hebrew term would be Lukakurai.
They probably sang that song.
No,
in that
probably
that version.
Yeah. And then his whole life changes. So he begins with this identity of a mamzer, of an outcast. And how does he begin his euangelion? How does Matthew begin his euangelion and start to point out the identity?
He does a genealogy, right?
Yes. And that genealogy is it written a certain way for a reason?
Yes. He starts with Abraham. Well, not
Yes.
really, but yeah.
He includes some specific people that are
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
really
the harlot and the
yeah.
pretend harlot.
Yeah. The prostitute, the pretend prostitute, and then the real prostitute.
Right.
And then there's a Moabitess, and then there's somebody
because he's
else's,
talking about outcasts.
Yeah, there's somebody else's wife, and it's like, okay, you probably could have left some of that stuff out, and he could have, for sure.
But considering his audience, he wanted them to understand that they were included.
Yeah. If you think your life is bad, and I'm going to let you know that there are some questionable things in his genealogy, in his past, and he's still
the king,
still chosen.
Mm-hmm.
His lineage still acceptable to God. And then we get the birth story. And who comes to visit?
Who comes to what?
Who comes to visit?
After the birth story? What are you talking about?
When Jesus is born. There are some people who come to visit.
Oh, the wise men?
Yeah, the Magi.
Oh.
Come from the east.
I thought this was a much harder question.
No.
Okay.
But we get this. Why are these Magi coming?
Because they were looking for the star.
They saw a star. Showed up in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And
didn't an angel visit them, though?
No.
That's not
That's
true.
before they left.
Well, that's what I mean.
But not before they came. Yeah.
What do you mean? That was before they left, but not before they came.
It was before they returned home. but not before they came and met Jesus.
Oh, okay.
That's what I mean.
Okay, yep, got it.
They said there's a new what?
I don't know. Just say it.
King.
Mm-hmm.
This is the part of this Evangelion conversation. They said, we're looking for the king of the Jews.
So wouldn't that be
Who
Herod?
did they meet?
Herod.
Okay, so what we see in this birth story is this juxtaposition of one man who identifies himself as king of the Jews and is known as king of the Jews, richest man in all history, compared to the one that they bow down and worship as king of the Jews,
Mm-hmm.
who is born
In a manger.
in a manger, somewhere around a whole bunch of sheep and cow dung. Like, very different
Mm-hmm.
positions. Then we get introduced to John the Baptist, who's
Mhm.
playing a specific role.
Elijah.
And Elijah, very popular in his day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was he actually really popular?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay. So we've got another outcast who is a little bit extreme.
Little bit.
And we talked about the potential of this being Jesus' rabbi,
Yes.
and why Joseph's backstory and Jesus' backstory really kind of lets that be a possibility, even.
Right.
That someone just 6 months older than him, that is the son of a Levite,
Mm-hmm.
clearly, trained as with what group of people?
Oh gosh.
He went to
The
Qumran University is where he went.
What's it start with?
Starts with an E.
I knew you were gonna say E. I can't ever remember.
Starts with an S. How about that?
Essenes, thank
Yeah.
you. I was like, I know it starts with an E. Essenes, yeah.
Yeah. Qumran University, Essene State, something like that, is where he's been trained up. And now he is kind of veering off the path from them, but he's really getting after it, making a declaration. What is his declaration? Do you remember? That Jesus specifically takes up. Starts with a repent.
For the kingdom is near.
Repent, for the kingdom is near. And last week we talked about potential rabbi being arrested. And so when he was arrested, Jesus withdraws from what?
The crowd.
He withdraws from the ministry that he's doing,
Mm-hmm.
and he takes and he sets up shop at Capernaum. Did he run from Herod at this point? Or was he just relocating to a spot that's more accessible to Herod?
I feel like he's relocating to a spot that's more accessible.
Definitely more accessible, close by to Herod. So he wasn't running. It wasn't. So anybody who interprets it that way, you're just wrong. So that's just how that's going to be. So he withdraws to Capernaum, and the next thing that we have is we've got a disciple of a rabbi who's now arrested. So the disciple becomes a rabbi, and in order to function as a rabbi, you need
followers.
And so Jesus goes and does what? We get a record of
Peter.
Jesus calling his disciples, and we talked about how we know very little, actually, conceptually, about what is actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because how old were these guys?
Well, 2 of them were old enough to run the ship by themselves.
So older than what age?
Older than 13.
13. Not very old.
Mm-mm.
So teenagers.
Well, and if I look at the story what is Peter's brother's name?
Andrew.
If I'm looking at it and they're not catching anything because they're casting to the other side of the boat.
It's like Daniel out fishing. May or may not catch anything, but he might be out there.
So, casting their net to the other side of the boat.
Or driving out into the pasture with hay and convincing himself that he catches the Spanish goats with Spanish music.
I mean,
it's hilarious.
That's
one of the best stories.
Those teenage thought processes.
Yes.
Pretty great. So just assuming that they're 16 and 18.
Somewhere in there. Yeah.
And then you have,
Then,
which makes Peter make so much more sense.
as an arrogant
As
21-year-old.
an arrogant 21-year-old instead of an idiot 35-year-old.
Yeah, a lot different.
Just, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you've got
James and John,
the
sons of Zebedee, who are
with their dad.
With dad, learning dad's trade. So they're how old?
Younger than 13.
Younger than 13. Does that affect how you see Peter, James, and John?
No.
You got this Peter, James, and John in a sailboat. Yeah, teenagers.
Because we don't depict them that way in a storybook or in.
No, they're
they look like grown men.
Yeah, they're not grown men. They're teenagers. They were grown men for their culture.
For sure.
But in our culture, we'd be like,
those
you
are
can't
babies.
vote and you can't drink. Yeah, I'm like.
Yeah. So they're just babies, really. I mean, to us.
Yes.
They were almost ready.
Well, they were old enough to be married off. Like, they were old enough they could have taken wives.
Mm-hmm.
If they had the money and the training. But now in their culture too, realistically, they would have learned their father's trade and had and worked in their father's house and as an extension of their father at least until age 30. Yeah. So they got 17 years of life as men still in the shadow of dad, which is like, again, somewhere we've gone wrong because like that's a great training ground. There's a lot of conversations that happen.
Well, and not only that, there are a lot of generations under that too, because
that's right. Yeah.
If you're starting that young, by the time you're 30, you have one half your age again, and who's also starting, and so generationally you have several under the same leadership.
And it makes a lot of sense it makes a lot of sense if you understand it that way, how John lived so much longer after Jesus is gone. So, I mean, just makes a difference. So,
well, and also thinking of him enduring as a younger man and not an older man.
Yeah.
Enduring the things that he.
Yeah, it's not like he was 90 when he died.
Right. I always think of him as just this old man.
Yeah. So then he's called his disciples, and he's talking with them, and some people start to. He's doing ministry. He's healing, teaching. There's some people who start to gather around. Where are they from? Everywhere. We've touched on every group. There's people from Syria, so pagans. There's people from the Decapolis who are even more pagan.
From Galilee.
So these religious people. We end up seeing the Zealots. We end up seeing the Herodians. We end up seeing, who else?
It says Jerusalem, Judea, and beyond the Jordan.
So Judea, probably the Herodians, but Jerusalem, probably what group of people?
Pharisees?
The Sadducees. Because the Pharisees would have been the people from Galilee.
Okay.
So we've got all this group of people and all these people who don't like each other. And how do you think the disciples feel?
I'm sure they were a little nervous.
A little bit worried, and Jesus calls them all together and he sits them down, and we go, well, this is the Sermon on the Mount, but who does he gather together to start to talk to?
His disciples. So this is a conversation that begins with his disciples, and he begins to speak, and we call these things the Beatitudes, and how they start. Blessed are the poor in spirit.
Then we get blessed are
those who mourn.
And then what do we get next?
The meek.
And then we get
those who hunger and thirst for righteousness.
Kind of getting a pattern here. We talked about the first four kind of being the inward struggle, right? Things we struggle with on the inside. And then if we have a chiasm, potentially chiastic second half that talks about the outward expression of how we deal with these inward things. Yes?
Yep.
And what is the reoccurring pronoun that we see here?
What's a pronoun? Proper noun? Those? What? Pronoun. What's a pronoun? Those? The?
Those. Yeah.
Those? They? What else is a pronoun?
I, me, my, she, he, it,
Clearly, I am
they.
not, what's it called? Well, I'm tired.
I wasn't
probably-
going to go with the political thing, but like,
Well, okay, but
choose your
I mean,
pronouns
I'm pretty
wisely,
sure
I
that
think would be
everybody in the world knows what a
conversation.
pronoun is in this
Yeah.
moment, and I'm like, I don't know what that is. I don't use them, obviously.
So those is kind of the pattern here. You don't have to, but he's speaking to the disciple,
Mm-hmm.
the disciples,
Right.
not that this there requires
There's more
an
than
S.
one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he says, what happens if I'm having a conversation with you and the conversation is teaching and it says, blessed are those.
I would think of like outside of myself,
Right.
not.
So when he
those
has
in this
this
room.
massive crowd of people or these big crowds of people like pursuing after him that are from all different places, and he gathers you together and you're a little concerned, you're a little worried, you're a little uncomfortable, and he says, hey, eyes right here. Hey, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness.
Telling you that there are going to be those you encounter. Like, to me,
Yes.
that's what you're saying.
Blessed are those people who are around us trying to get close to me,
Mm-hmm.
who are poor in spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And all these out here who are mourning because of their hurt and their pain and their sickness.
Yeah.
Like, this is the kingdom. This is who you have sent to be. Now, the challenge that a lot of people have with the Beatitudes is blessed, 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 blessed. Persecution, persecution is how it wraps up.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah, but if he's talking about everybody else and then he says to them,
okay, so read verse 10.
blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
So we still have a those,
Mm-hmm.
and they're persecuted. What comes next?
In verse 11,
Yeah, verse 11.
blessed are you when they revile and persecute you and say all kinds of evil against you falsely for my sake.
So our pronoun has changed.
Mm-hmm. I know what a pronoun is now.
Our pronoun has changed. He's talked about those
Mm-hmm.
people, all of them, those people. They're blessed. And just like them, this is what the kingdom looks like. This is what it is. And when you make these declarations about the kingdom, what you need to know is you're going to deal with persecution. You're going to deal with hurt. You're going to deal with reviling. You're going to deal with hatefulness, because all the people who have come before you to declare the same thing have been treated the same way.
Right. Gosh, and even reading verse 13, I know you're not there yet, but it makes it to know the conversation setting before that.
Yeah, we're about to get there, but like, think about that conversation. Like, this is what it looks like. This is what the kingdom looks like. And when we really take a 10,000-foot view of the Beatitudes, we get a declaration from Jesus, and he's having this conversation with his disciples, and he's saying, this is what the kingdom looks like. This is the euangelion. I am a new king, come to establish a new kingdom, and this is what it looks like. It doesn't look like what you've seen before. And because it doesn't look like what you've seen before, and it doesn't touch the people that it has touched before, you are going to be persecuted and reviled and hated because, well, we've never done it that way. You've never heard that conversation, have you? Have you ever been on the one side or the side of we've never done it that way conversation? I have. I feel like I'm still fairly young to still have been one of the people on the side of the conversation where somebody's like, hey, we could do it like this. I'm like, no, I don't think so. That's a bad idea. We don't do it that way. Like, cool, but this is a conversation that even in our life right now still happens. Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have ideas, and I'm like, hey, we could do it this way. I don't think so, Bill. I don't think so, Timmy.
I say Tim.
Tim.
I say I don't think so, Tim, because of Home Improvement.
Home Improvement. Yeah, yeah.
When she would say that to him all the time, I don't think so, Tim. Or no, Al would say that
Yeah.
to him. Yeah.
I don't think so, Tim. Sure.
I don't think so, Tim. Thanks for that.
Sorry. Home Improvement? Yes. All right. I'm not. So, back on track here. But this is what the kingdom looks like. And when you make these declarations to all these people that it's never been declared to before.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're supposed to be, I'm kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but this light is shining into the darkness, and it's reaching to what group of people? What does, I'm not sure if it's Matthew, but anyway, this light that shines in the darkness is a light for what group of people? This is a very large group of people that has a specific name. Jesus, huh? Yeah, but it starts with a
Gentiles?
G. Yeah. This light has come for the Gentiles. And it's like, yeah, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Never let them
They
in.
are the ultimate mamzers. They are separated. Not just are they people who have been rejected from the promise, but like they weren't even invited to the party or even thought of to be included in the party in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got some problems. So I want you to start at verse 10 and just go ahead and read through verse 16, and then we'll come back and have some context conversations. We'll take a 10,000-foot view of what it looks like and probably hit on a lot of the same information what we just did, and then move on to some context. So Matthew chapter 5, verse 10 through 16.
Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they revile and persecute you, and say all kinds of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing, but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven.
Now, we've heard this
So
many times. And what do we usually get when we've heard it so many times?
The lullaby effect.
The lullaby effect. Just like we get the lullaby effect of, oh yeah, he called Andrew and Peter and James and John. They were fishermen. Yeah, they were like fisher boys.
Right.
Right? Fisher Price? Isn't that what?
Brian said Fisher Price.
Hope your back feels better, Brian. I'm sure you're not watching this, but I love you anyway. So some context. Let's talk about some context, and we're going to get in the Wayback Machine and take ourselves back like 60 weeks. Whenever we were coming. I'm not sure what's happening. I do know. She just put her jacket on. Okay. We're going to take ourselves back like 60 weeks. Do you want my jacket? It's right there. Are you sure?
I'm great.
Okay.
My hands are really cold.
We're going to take ourselves back like 60 weeks when we came out of the book of Deuteronomy and into the book of
You said we're not doing a full review. You just went.
So we talked about God placing his people at a place. Do you remember what it was?
No.
So why was this piece of dirt so important?
The crossroads. Ah!
He placed his people that he chose at the crossroads of the earth, because there were 4 major trade routes for all of the world, and they all ran through
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem. And God says, put my people right there so they can interact with everybody on the face of the earth ever. And
I didn't even realize it said it right there.
and then he says, in the topography, in the Eastern tradition, what does water represent?
Chaos.
Chaos. And we've got the chaos of the sea, and up the hill, we got the flatlands that are by the sea, which who lived there?
I don't know.
I guess I should kind of be it from this way. This is the sea. This is north. Sea. Flatlands by the sea. Group of people lived here. Were kind of a problem. Had a really big guy.
Oh, Philistines.
The Philistines.
Good context clue.
Yes. Flatlands, it was the Philistines. Then there's these rolling hills that they called the
Shephelah.
Shephelah.
We talked about this one right before church.
Yeah. I was hoping you'd catch that particular word. So good. You got
did.
the rolling hills of the Shephelah, and when it got up to the top, it comes up to a high place, a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And this mountain, this high place, what would a high place be in their culture?
Like the best place to be?
It'd be a holy place. It'd be
Okay.
the most defensible place, but it's going to be a holy place because they're closest to
God.
And in that high place is where the temple
The
is.
temple.
It's where Jerusalem is.
So is that like, well, never mind. Go
Most of the people settled where? God placed them in the
Shephelah.
Shephelah, where the mountains bowed down, and they brought the high place down to interact with
The low place, chaos.
move to take the high places and the righteousness of the high places towards the chaos.
Okay. So that was just their visual.
Yes, like that was
depiction
their.
of why they did that.
Yes. So very important. And then we also talked about tells. Do you remember talking about tells?
Yes.
And
Jonas spelled tell on the way to church, and so that is immediately where I went.
So we talked about tells, and when they have these archaeological digs.
Yes, I remember this.
And they find cities. They usually find them where?
Buried.
Mm-hmm. And then underneath them is what?
Another city.
Another city, usually the ruins of another city. And underneath that is usually?
The ruins, until they get to dirt and they're not anymore.
Yeah, the ruins of multiple cities. Why would that be the case? Well, what happens when one city gets destroyed?
They bury it.
They
build on top of it.
Why?
Because it's the high place.
Or because there are there's certain resources, there are limited resources.
I think it's interesting because it's like, well, I was about to say it's a defendable position, but they obviously, but was it because they took it over?
So how did they know how old specific cities and ruins are?
I don't know.
Do you remember?
No.
Anybody?
So what are the gate? The rooms?
The city gate.
Oh yeah, that's right.
What was the significance that you come in the gate, and then what is there?
The rooms?
There are rooms.
Mm-hmm.
What happens at those rooms? What happened at the city gate?
Oh, the business.
All the business of the city.
Yeah.
All the judgments are made there. All the commerce happens there. What else happens there?
I don't know.
Okay, we'll get back to that.
Okay.
All right. So we got the city gates. That's how we know how old they are. And in these tells, when we excavate these cities, what we found was we got these city gates, and there are different groups of people who live in and around the cities. The rich people lived where? Do you remember?
At the top. In the wall. In the middle.
In the
middle. I was going to get there.
In the city center, that's where all the richest people live.
Oh, because they'd have to go through everybody else.
Yeah, got to get through everybody else. Then the middle class people, they said, hey, we need a way to defend this place. So we're going to build houses in the city wall,
Mm-hmm.
and the middle class people lived there.
And then the poor lived outside.
And what did they call that?
I don't remember.
Casemate housing.
Casemate?
Casemate housing.
Okay.
That's what it is, built into the wall.
Okay.
So, what happened when you were under siege?
I don't know.
Fill my trailer with rocks.
That's right.
So you got like a 4-foot wall out here and a 4-foot wall in here, and like
Put
20
rocks in
feet
between.
or 30 feet of house, and then you go, hey, those people are coming to get us. So you take 4 foot and make it 30 feet thick. Get through all that rock. We'll be waiting.
Smart.
And while we're waiting, we're going to be up above you, throwing stuff on top of you, right? Like, this is how they defended.
Right.
So, this is how they built these fortified cities. So, we've got the rich people who live in the city center, the middle class people who kind of lived in the casemate housing. But then, what happened to the people who were poor, too poor to afford property in the city?
They lived outside of the city.
They lived outside of the city in the towns and villages that they called daughters. So when you see the term daughters of Zion, this is the poor people who can't afford, who aren't in the city. They are
Have you
outside.
said that before?
Daughters of Zion. Huh?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so these are daughters.
This is new, right, that you're saying this? Have you guys heard this yet?
We talked
No?
about daughters, I think.
No, I don't know that we've
Okay,
ever said
so
this.
little towns outside.
Do you remember? Okay.
Okay, well, here we are.
That's amazing. I did not know that.
So that was the poor people
I
or
was
the
just going to
farmers
say,
and
I'm
stuff.
exceedingly poor. From
Some did, yes, but they would kind of anyway. Yeah.
Mhm.
But unfortified, unprotected,
Right.
no walls. It was just there.
Wow, daughters. Interesting.
And then the poorest of the poor.
In the dump. Yeah.
What happens when you tear down a city and build a city on top of another city? And then that city gets torn down and you put some dirt on top of it and you build another city.
Well, it gets taller.
Gets taller. You get
Right.
a higher, more defensible place. And then when you have a lot of people
Mhm.
in one place and
Mhm.
you have some plumbing, because the Hellenists brought us plumbing.
Right.
What are you doing with all that stuff?
It's running downhill.
Runs downhill. It runs downhill out. So they would set up specific places where that plumbing would all run out to. And since you're already have limited resources in the area and you're going to use this space for the runoff of it, probably should take your trash and refuse and throw it in the same place. But you can't just keep building a pile of that stuff. At some point, you've got to do something with it, right? So what do they do with it, Toy Story?
Burn it.
They burn it.
That was my flame. You couldn't tell.
That was good.
Okay.
That's good. Yeah, I was thinking like a rocket. Rockets
Well,
explode. Anyway,
it was going to turn into rocket fuel eventually. If
Yeah.
you don't do something.
so it's burning. But since there's certain amounts of liquid in it, it just kind of smolders constantly.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
if you remember
he was
back,
buffering. Sorry.
if you remember back in the book of Jeremiah, our conversation,
No.
The Valley of Hinnom
Mm-mm.
is the valley where they did all these sacrifices.
Oh, yes.
And they turned it into the trash heap outside of town,
Mhm.
and they burned
Mhm.
the refuse all the time.
Yep.
This place would be the trash dump. This is where the people lived. The poorest of people lived.
Exceedingly poor.
The exceedingly poor. They lived in this place for a few reasons, but mainly because they were so poor that they didn't have anything to eat. And so they're trying to find whatever they could in scraps. And if you ever go like Mexico City, they have a lot of people who live in the trash, and we go, oh, How could that ever happen? Well, I mean, since biblical times, it's been kind of a thing that people have done. And so, because of that, um, they would give it some specific names. They'd refer to it as the place where the worm never dies, or the place that thirst is never quenched, or the fire is never quenched. And because it was a place where they're like fighting over food, they would call it the place of weeping and gnashing of teeth. And so it is a Greek term that is borrowed from that valley of Hinnom, Ben Hinnom, that is from a Greek term, or from a Hebrew term borrowed for the Greeks. And so the Greeks called it Gehenna. The word Gehenna is used 12 times in the New Testament, 0 times in the Old Testament, 12 times in the New Testament, and we translate it. Do you know what word we translate it as?
Is it a bad word?
Starts with an H.
Oh, man. Can you spell the word tell and take the T off?
Yes.
That's what Jonas told me in the car on the way here.
So
if you take the T off, it's a bad word. I said, no, that's L. He goes, yeah, but add an H.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Exactly.
Why are you learning how to spell this? I don't know, Mom. I just figured it out.
So this is the term Gehenna, and it is used 12 times in the Bible. 12 times it's used. Yeah. It's used 12 times in the Bible, 11 times by Jesus.
Gehenna.
Who
uses it the 12th time?
One of the disciples, in referencing tongues.
Okay,
I
guess it doesn't matter. So
it's either James or Peter, but I'm not certain at this very moment. But 11 times it is Jesus specifically speaking about hell and weeping, gnashing of teeth, all these things. So, which brings me back to what other things would be at the city gate? There would be judgment and the handing off of judgment. Do you remember the word for that? Starts with an M. Mishpat. Mishpat. Yes.
P-H-A-T.
Yeah. Mishpat. That would be handed out at the city gate. That would be the seeking out of retributive justice. And
what else is at the gate? What are you trying to get
also,
me to say?
This would be the safety net. This would be where the excess of food, and if you're in need, this would be the place that you would go to get those resources.
So the food bank?
Yes.
Okay.
So over time, when you build on top of another city, you get a city on a
hill.
And this city on a hill would be
cannot be hidden.
The idea of what to those people who are poor and destitute? Hope. This is where they would run to. Like, if I don't have anything and I'm stuck in this place with nothing, in this trash heap where stuff is burning all the time, where I'm barely scratching by, and I'm like, you know what? There is something. There has to be something at the city gate.
Mm-hmm.
I make my way up to the city gate, and that's where that city, I got to make my trek up the hill to get what I need. So, this is where the Bible says that and what happens if it's dark and you are wandering around looking for a place of refuge? What are you going to see as you see this particular city as we're describing it? What does it look like?
I assume a light on the top of the hill. I don't know.
Some type of light, yes. Some type of the smoldering fire of the city dump is going to make the city almost look like a candle in the night, like a light in this darkness, where I found this place of refuge, this place of safety. this place of hope. But it says, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill that cannot be hidden. Would this be a familiar sight to these people in this time?
Yeah, for sure. You are the hope, basically.
Yes, that you are the hope. That you are the kingdom. You are the expression of the kingdom of God to all these people so that they can find hope that's found in Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if you make this declaration? What's coming?
Persecution.
Persecution. And he goes on to say, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but they put it on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house, or potentially all in the neighborhood, right? And in the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good deeds, or what would be another word that we might throw in there? Starts with an M that we just said. The justice that flows, the mishpat. They might see the mishpat that comes because of God in you, and that they would give glory to
the Father in heaven.
To the Father in heaven. This is the call of the disciples. They're sitting here on a hill looking around at these people uncomfortable, and Jesus says, hey, hold on. All these people are blessed because of what I'm going to do. All of these people are blessed. They're struggling and frustrated, but they're going to be blessed because I'm calling you to declare the new king and the new kingdom to them, to be the hope that these people hope for, the place where they're wandering around in the darkness looking for. And the burning away of all the refuse and the garbage that's falling away is the light that says that there is hope and there's plenty in the city. The city on a hill that is the light of the world, and the Old Testament is going to call the city of Zion, the New Jerusalem. And Jesus is going to say that this light and this place is a light not just for the Jews, but also for the Gentiles. That all these people that are called mamzers, that are separated from the promise, are welcome to. And that's who we're called to be. That's where we're called to operate in. And this is the pronouncement through this Evangelion and the culmination of the Sermon on the Mount through the lens of Matthew. So we're going to have some more discussion, but you should come and join us next week at 6:30 ish.